Welcome to Amy's Table. Today I'm talking with Pam Cho, a certified forest therapy guide who helps people lead and live with greater intention. We're exploring how nature, mindfulness, and forest bathing can help us reduce stress, lead more effectively, and reconnect with what matters most. If you've ever dreamed of feeling calmer, clearer, and more connected, this conversation is for you. Pull up a seat. This is Amy's Table. Pam, your career has gone from the White House to executive coaching and forest therapy. Tell me a little bit of the evolution of Pam.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast, and I'm just delighted to be here. I love talking about the journey and everything leading up to where I am as a certified forest therapy guide, but I have had a background in communications that's really been the thread throughout my entire career. So I was very fortunate to work in the White House early on in my career.
Who was the president when you were there?
It was Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan.
Yeah. So did that for a couple of years, and then that's when I started my corporate work and working in corporate communications, and then from there went to executive coaching, and I've had my own executive coaching firm for 16 years now. So it's had a thread of communications and helping people through change and supporting other people.
I was going to say, there's the thread, because I think in our community in Cincinnati, you can't meet almost anyone who Pam Cho hasn't somehow encouraged, enlightened, inspired, assisted. You're amazing, and you have a great reputation as a person who is very thoughtful, helpful, and insightful, and I love that about you. I really do.
Thank you.
Well, forest therapy is quite a journey from the White House. But I want to ask you, before we get too much into that, what was your relationship with nature when you were a kid, when you were younger? Was that always a natural fit for you?
It was always in my life. It wasn't until later on that I realized why it was in my life or how to use it in my life. But I was very fortunate to be raised by a mom and a dad that loved spending time outdoors. So family vacations were camping, canoeing. When it rained, we loved taking our shoes off. My mom would say, you know, go run out in the puddles. And so that's how I was raised. And then as an adult, and I started working, I moved away from it because I thought I didn't have time for nature. I didn't have time to be outdoors. And I didn't know how important it really was. And then I had a couple things happen that sort of reawakened me to the science behind spending time in nature. So yes, it's always been there. I just haven't always used it the way I could have.
Yeah. You know, it's funny when you said, I don't have time to get out in nature. I don't have time to be in the outdoors. And your attitude about that through your training and through your research and your learning has clearly changed. Now I bet you're saying to people, you don't have time not to.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
You're exactly right.
So when was it when you were like, forest therapy? And actually, I'm going to back up, Pam, because a lot of people are like, forest therapy, what the heck are they talking about? What is forest therapy?
Yeah. So forest therapy is a way of learning how to use nature to calm our nervous system and to enhance our mental and our physical well-being. And it's a practice that started in Japan in the 1980s as a way to bring healthcare costs down. And they found that a lot of the illness in Japan was stress-related from people that were used to working outside on the land during the technology revolution, were moving into urban cities, working in high rises behind computers. So they opened up the parks, they educated workers on the importance of taking 15 minutes before, during, or after work. And after, I think it was 2 years, healthcare costs started coming down as people started alleviating some of the stress in their bodies, and they were healthier mentally and physically. So that's one of the things that I love about the practice of forest therapy is that it's evidence-based. I mean, there is science behind the fact that when we go outside, our blood pressure comes down, our pulse rate comes down, cortisol goes down, and when that happens is when we are in a much stronger state to make good decisions. We're more creative, we're more hopeful. So it's one of the things that I love about it.
I love that too. You know, when you first were talking about this and practicing this, and this has exploded, I referred to it, maybe you never did, maybe it was only me, saying to you, forest bathing.
Yeah.
But forest bathing, people would always look at me and say, you're doing what with Pam? And, you know, so it's not, you're not taking a bath in the woods, right? But it's bathing in. But do you still use that phrase, or are you really forest therapy now?
I do. You know, that is funny that you asked that, because when I first got certified, I'm a certified forest therapy guide. And so that's pretty easy to say, and it's a little easier for people to get their head around. Forest bathing, people's heads go everywhere, from, you know, getting naked out in the woods and bringing your beach towel and...
It was awkward when we showed up naked. No, I'm kidding.
But the term forest bathing comes from the Japanese words of Shinrin Yoku. So in Japan, this practice is called Shinrin Yoku. And Shinrin is forest, Yoku is bathing. And so it's about bathing in the healing elements of the forest, bathing in the healing elements of nature. So when I first started my practice, I called myself, you know, a forest therapy guide that took people out on forest therapy walks. But then I thought, no, you know, the actual translation is forest bathing, Shinrin Yoku, so I'm going to call it what it is and be accurate about it.
Yeah.
So now I use forest bathing.
Well, I'll tell you what, whatever it is miraculous. And I took my family on a forest bathing excursion with you. You do people, you do corporate groups, you do whole slews of nurses and things like that. I mean, when you first talked about this, I remember you saying, I believe this is going to be like yoga, where way back when about yoga, people would be like, downward dog, what? And now it's everywhere, right? We do it with goats. But now, forest bathing, less and less people look at me like I'm crazy when I sing the praises of what you do, and more and more people are hearing about it. But I love that you had that future vision.
Well,
and it's
thank
coming
you.
true.
It is coming true. And I think, you know, at the time that you and I talked about that, I shared that the Washington Post had published an article with the headline that read, "Forest bathing is where yoga was 30 years ago." And that was published in 2016. So now it's 20 years. We're, you know, about 20 years before we catch up with yoga. But you know, it started in Japan, and in Asia, this is just part of the culture. In Europe, it's very, very popular. And it came to the United States about 18, 20 years ago. And it's booming. It is a booming practice. I went to South Korea last October to attend the World Forum on Forest Therapy. There were 350 people from all over the world, 35 countries, that were there to present their research on the findings of how forest therapy, how nature is being used for physical and mental well-being. And I sat in a conference room for 2 days and then went out to visit forest healing centers in South Korea. You know, these beautiful centers for outdoor and indoor forest therapy. So it is definitely becoming more and more popular in the U.S. and in Cincinnati. So
I think that's so great. Well, that's it. You're not just dealing with individuals now. You're dealing with hospitals and with medical practitioners. And it's like people are climbing on board. And yet it's one of those things that if we ever paid attention, we've known it inside ourselves all along. I told you when I walk, Sharon Woods used to be one of my favorite places to walk when I lived over near the Gorge Trail. And when I would walk it, usually by myself was when I had these greatest experiences, which makes sense with what you do, sort of you go a little bit within on a forest bathing excursion with you. I always felt like the top of my head just opened up, and I don't know, I just kept going. It made me larger than I was and very content. And I love that. I'm now in a position where I don't have as easy access to a wooded area, so I'm jumping around a little bit on questions, but what do you do if you don't have access to a forest nearby?
So that's the beauty of this practice, is that you can use a very small area, indoors or outdoors, to do forest bathing. So for instance, I live in an urban condominium with a patio, and in the morning is where I do my forest bathing out on my porch, and I sit there and I have a cup of coffee with a little table and some herbs and some flowers. That's forest bathing. I'm sitting there, I am relaxing, I'm reawakening my five senses. I also have a place indoors where I can do forest bathing, and that is my chair that's in the corner, where I have a green plant, I have some flowers, I have a candle, I have a picture, and I try to use all nature-inspired colors in my indoor as well as my outdoor environments. So yeah, it's just about, the one thing that I tell everybody is that anybody can simply step outside their door, open a window, look out a window, and you're doing forest bathing. Because when your eyes land on the color green and blue, when they land on what's called a fractal in nature, these beautiful reoccurring patterns like on the back of a leaf, it starts to relieve some of the stress in our body. So you
don't
can do it
overcomplicate it. You don't need to go
exactly
through the
right.
national parks. You can do it wherever you are. In fact, you recently did it in Washington Park.
That was a very urban experience, yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
So I did a breakout session for the Power to Pursue conference here in Cincinnati that took place last week, and I took 40 women across the street into Washington Park, and we did forest bathing. We went out, stood under trees, we listened to birds, we listened to cars honking, we listened to people talking, but when you're forest bathing and you're outside, you hear man-made noises, you hear nature-made noises, but it's all part of your environment. So it can literally be done in the middle of a city where there is a green live plant.
Obviously, it was a challenge at Washington Park, but was there ever a group that you thought, oh man, they are not going to resonate with this?
Yes. So I got a call asking me to take a group of high school students out on a forest bathing walk. And even talking about it now, it makes my heart flutter because I thought, oh boy, asking high school students to leave their phones on the bus. Oh yeah, leave their coffees on the bus and come out and take a walk in the woods with this woman that they've never met. But it was one of the most successful walks that I've done, in that I loved the transition from these skeptical, and rightly so, skeptical high school students that were walking with me out in the woods, and I taught them how to put their hands on the trunk of a tree and lean into it, put their worries, their concerns into the tree trunk, which will go up out of the leaves to relieve stress. And it was the week before exams. So they're all, hugging their trees and putting their hands on the trunk. And then there was a place where we went over a bridge that had a creek underneath it. And I had them pick up a leaf, and I said, I want you to put a wish on your leaf and drop it over the bridge, the side of the bridge, into the water, so that the creek can take your wish out into the Little Miami, the Ohio River, out into the Gulf of Mexico, so that your wish goes out into the world. And they loved it.
I want to stop taping and go do that right now. I love that.
So at the end, they were in a great mood. We took this really fun selfie, the group together. And I do believe, and even some of them said, I'm going to start spending more time outside. Hearing that from a high school student, my job's done.
Absolutely.
My job's done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Does it ever, any of your groups ever discover, untapped emotions or feel very moved by the experience?
Yeah. The answer is yes, because when we get out in nature, it is a place where there's nothing challenging us. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to be productive. We can simply just be. And that's when sometimes, grief or sadness can start to pop up. And so when it does, we're just quiet, and I just encourage people just to sit with it, and then we move on, and then I'm always available afterwards. But it's a beautiful place to go to try to process grief in particular.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're experiencing such rapid fire learning and changes and how you can approach all of this. Talk a little bit about how technology is coming into forest bathing with VR glasses and all of that.
So one of the things that I was most struck by when I went to South Korea was the use of technology with forest bathing, because not everybody is physically able to get out to a forest. And so they do things like use VR glasses where they create these beautiful nature videos that people can use. They have these indoor 360 rooms with the video all the way around it, with the fan with the breeze, the sound of birds, the scent of pine, and people lay on the bamboo floor on a mat and do forest bathing.
Oh, I can imagine.
And the researchers there said that they get very similar results in terms of lower blood pressure, lower pulse, doing indoor as well as outdoor. So the 360 room, the VR glasses. I've gone into a retirement center and I've set up, that old-fashioned screen that you hook at the top to show your family slides on, and I've put a looping video of rain falling on autumn leaves. And I've done, nature meditations, and people love it. So that's one of my passions, is to find a way to bring this to even more people that are not able to get outdoors on their own.
I love this, Pam.
Yeah.
When you talked about fractals and what we can look at, you've even mentioned that carpeting is being designed with forest bathing in mind, and talk about that.
Yeah, it's so interesting how this is starting to show up into, major corporate conglomerate products. And Monsanto is a great example of how they launched a line of carpet that has patterns in the carpet that replicate patterns that you find in nature. And they're installing it at the entrances of schools and hospitals so that when a child walks into school and their eyes land on the carpet, it starts to relax their bodies, or a patient walks into a hospital. And my understanding from my friend that sells it here in Cincinnati, it's a very, very popular line. They have scientists that have done a lot of research around exactly what those patterns look like. So yeah, the VR glasses, it's definitely evolving.
Yeah, which is so cool, and obviously showing its importance and its potential impact. You would think, knowing globally what it does for the cost of healthcare, that it would be a big, huge push here in the States, because obviously that's an area we'd all like to save a little something on. But Speaking of your learning, biophilic design. Yeah. I'm so impressed I pronounced that right.
You pronounced it perfectly. So biophilic design is something that I stumbled into after I became a forest therapy guide, and it is interior design using nature-inspired elements, whether it's color, texture, whatever. So I'm in the process of earning my certification in that, because what I want to do with it is, I want to help a hospital design places where patients, staff, families can go just to step outside or to step in a room into a small space that is nature inspired, just to help them
the
relax.
Comfort it will give them.
Exactly.
I mentioned to you when my late husband was going through a lot of really intense medical stuff, and it was mostly me alone because it was COVID time, and I would sit in these sterile, horrible rooms processing really difficult stuff. And I remember saying to my kids, I have this idea. I want sounds to play in his room and in the waiting room, and I think they should have windows opening. It's like, even I knew without any knowledge of what you were doing, how healing that would be. So
You're
it's like
exactly
these are
right.
comfort areas for the families of patients or families of. I love that you're doing that. There's no stopping you. I would imagine home offices, that would be great, and bedrooms, and
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So,
you just keep going and
yeah,
going and
yeah.
going. I'll tell you what.
Yep.
Well, what are a few simple things that we can do in our own home to bring a sense of the ease, the comfort, and the improvements that forest therapy can give to us in our own homes?
Well, I'll tell you some of the things that I personally have done that I talk to other people about. So the one that is the most important is to find a space outdoors, and ideally one also indoors. In forest bathing, it's referred to as a sit spot. And it's a place that you go to on a regular basis where you're quiet. It's time for reflection. It's just time to get yourself grounded and to go outside and to use your five senses. I look up at the sky. I like feeling the breeze on my cheek. I listen for the birds. I'm tasting my coffee or my tea. Sometimes I'm out there for 30 seconds when it's really cold. Sometimes it's 10 minutes or 30 minutes, depending on the day. But starting your day by simply just stepping outside in your bathrobe with a blanket over you, whatever it is so important. And have maybe some, a pot of flowers or some herbs sitting there, and set up the same thing indoors, when you're not able to go out. So that's number one. Number two is finding things that you can bring into your home that are nature inspired, whether it's the color, the texture, the scent, a candle, a rug, a painting, photography, because your brain responds to even a photograph of flowers the same way it does when your brain sees flowers in a garden. So it's very, very soothing. And then one kind of fun thing that I started doing last summer is I take an 8-ounce ball jar and put some water in it, and then I fill it with flowers, and I put it in the cup holder of my car. And I call that my forest bathing go cup. And last summer, when I was doing this, and I would go through a drive-through to get my drink or my food, and the attendant would say, "Oh, your flowers are so beautiful." And on a whim, I thought, I picked up a flower and I gave it to the person in the window, and loved it. So now that's something that I do, is I use a forest bathing go cup, and I put flowers in that I can share with people.
I love that. And when you're stuck in traffic, rather than focusing on all the darn drivers around you, focus on your forest bathing go cup and really feel some of those effects. When you're really stressed, when you're overwhelmed, when you've got 800 forest bathing clients lined up, what's your go-to move to find ease and find comfort? I'm assuming it has something to do with nature, but what do you do?
So the two most important things to me in terms of the place that I go to be quiet and to relax is to be outside, ideally under a tree canopy. And the second ideal thing to have in my space is water. So I'm fortunate that my husband and I live in a condo that overlooks the Ohio River, and so the movement of water is so soothing. Or sitting by a creek. So tree canopy and water. Mm-hmm.
Good advice. Very good advice. Well, now you're working on something kind of exciting. We've only got a couple minutes left, but you're working on Ohio's first ANFT certified self-guided forest bathing trail. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So ANFT, Association of Nature and Forest Therapy, started a program 3 years ago to help land managers of nature preserves and forests design forest bathing paths that people can do on their own without a guide. And so you go, there's an entrance, there's a sign that tells you about forest bathing, it shows you the path, and you go from the entrance to the first stop, and it's some sort of seat or bench, and it has a recommended meditation there. And you can sit there as long as you want, and then you move on to the second meditation spot with another beautiful meditation that's designed for the space that you are in. And the reason that I'm so passionate about getting this done is because I don't have time to take everybody out, but if I can direct people to a place where they can go, that will help even more people be able to experience forest bathing.
I think it's great. One of my favorite phrases is how you do anything is how you do everything. And whether it be the White House, whether it be executive coaching, whether it be out in the woods, how you do anything is how you do everything. And it's beautifully. And it's with a sense of generosity and a sense of helping your fellow man. And I love it so much, Pam.
Thank you.
I do. Well, thank you for joining us. How can people find out more about you and your forest bathing programs and even booking an opportunity with you?
So the best way is to find me through my website, trekcoaching.com, T-R-E-K, coaching.com. There's all kinds of information there, and my contact information is there as well.
Well, I'm going to make a commitment. Over the winter, I said to you, you encouraged us all, go outside first thing. I went outside in the sub-zero weather with my coffee. I lasted the exact minute. I had a timer on. I'm like, Pam said 1 minute. I stayed out there a minute, and I froze myself senseless. But I'm going to try, starting tomorrow morning, to just do 1 minute. Just one. Maybe it's going to expand to 2, 3, 10, 15. And add that to my morning ritual, because I believe everything you are saying is true and then some, and that would be a really easy form of self-care. So
absolutely.
I'm going to encourage everybody to do
good
that.
Good for you.
Good for you.
Thank you. And I hope that you find peace and calm and a great start to your day when you step outside.
I have a sense I will. Thank you, Pam. And thank you for joining us, too. I hope you come back next time. There's always a seat for you at Amy's table. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks to our sponsors, too, Wow Window Boxes, High Street, and Jenny Simon Face. Please subscribe to Amy's Table and share this conversation with a friend. Follow along for more inspiration, gatherings, and everyday ideas from our community. Until next time, keep looking for the good, keep making room for connection, and remember, there's always a seat for you at Amy's Table.